Alright, so in 1988, there was this guy named Robert Morris, a graduate student at Cornell University, who created this thing called the Morris worm. The worm exploited the weaknesses of certain software and spread copies of itself from computer to computer. The intentions of Morris were for the worm to be harmless, but unfortunately, that didn't go as planned.
Back in 1988, we were just beginning to see about 15% of people using personal computers, which ran on a disk operating system. If you wanted to upgrade your software, you had the option of installing Windows 2.0. The up-and-coming technology of this time was T1, which was the least data communication line that connected the data of different networks to the internet. And thankfully, the Morris worm attack took place a year before the World Wide Web was created.
The Morris worm was one of the first computer worms distributed via the internet and was the first to gain significant mainstream media attention. Here's the breakdown of what the Morris worm was exactly. The worm was a self-replicating computer program. According to Morris, its purpose was to measure and record the size of the internet at the time. The worm exploited several weaknesses to gain entry to targeted systems, including a hole in the debug mode of the Unix sendmail service, a buffer overrun hole in the Finger network service, computer infiltration due to weak passwords.
It would have made a lot of sense for the worm to leave any computers that it had already infected alone. However, Morris had his concerns that if the worm did that, then it would be really easy to kill. People could just run processes that would tell the worm that their computers already had it installed, preventing the worm from spreading through their computers, which would then prevent the spread of the worm altogether.
How did the attack actually occur? Morris stealthily launched the worm from an MIT computer. The worm was designed so that 1 out of 7 times it would continue to install itself even if it had already done so. This is part of the reason that the worm was so destructive. Not only did it cause the computer to slow down under the weight of unnecessary processing, but it also left many computers with thousands of copies of the worm within 24 hours of the original worm's release.
Leaving so many copies of itself behind, the worm left infected computers unable to do anything except run these copies until they were taken off of the internet and thoroughly cleaned of the worm. But even ridding a computer of the worm could take up to 2 days, and putting it back on the internet would almost instantly flood it with new copies. The question is, how would this happen if there was only a 1 in 7 chance for the worm to create an extra copy of itself? That's a 15% chance of it happening, but how did it actually cause so much damage? Please pay close attention to the television.
Let's imagine a network of 15 computers, all connected to one another. Say one of them gets the worm and infects the other 14 computers. Okay, so now they all have a copy of the worm. What now? Well, now each of these 14 new copies tries to spread itself to each of the other 14 computers, and each attempt has a 1 in 7 chance of succeeding. Basic arithmetic shows that we should expect about 28 successes, which means that there will be about 28 new worms in the system, and these 28 worms each try to infect the other 14 computers, putting 56 new worms into the system, which then turns into 112, then 224, and so on. Taking this into consideration, it's actually pretty easy to see how this worm was able to get so out of control.
This attack may have been accidental on Morris's part, but there were certainly some organizational issues that allowed the technical flaws to enable the attack. One of those being that it was designed to remain hidden while running. Although it was targeted for computers running a specific version of the Unix operating system, it spread widely because it featured multiple vectors of attack, like sendmail and the others previously stated. Although unintentionally, the worm caused a denial of service attack for about 10% of the 60,000 machines that were connected to ARPANET, meaning that 6,000 computers were affected.
Now, how was this problem dealt with? Was it easy to fix? How long did it take to fix it? For starters, the entire internet had to be disconnected and every infected computer had to be cleaned out. Only when a computer was 100% clear of any trace of the worm could it be reconnected to the internet. People at major institutions like MIT, NASA, Purdue University, and UC Berkeley began acting immediately, and several patches to fix their worm were then released. This whole incident took several days to sort out.
This attack raised several new issues. There was definitely a realization that there was not proper security when it came to cybercrimes. It inspired a new generation of hackers and also a wave of internet-driven assaults that continue to plague our digital systems to this day. This attack was a wake-up call for the country and the cyber age to come. Computer intrusion detection software began being created by developers since it was much needed after this incident.
So what happened to Morris, and what consequences did he face because of the worm? He was the first person convicted of a felony under the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Although he was spared jail time, Morris was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 400 hours of community service, and a fine of over $10,000. Today, Morris is a 10-year professor at MIT and has gone on to win the Sigismund Weiser Award for his research on operating systems.
This attack demonstrated that with the advancement in technology, unintended or undesirable consequences could arise. Since the Morris worm was the first of its kind, it was covered by the press, which made the general public aware that malicious computer programs exist and that there was not enough security to prevent any issues regarding them. There was also a realization that there should be an emergency response team for responding to computer security threats in the future.
At the time of the attack, the only policy in place for a crime like this was the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, allowing unauthorized access to protected computers. As a result of the attack, there were teams like CERT and DARPA created. After seeing the trouble that the worm created, it was noted that there were definitely some changes that needed to be made as far as policies for cybercrimes or anything of that nature. The House of Representatives, U.S. General Accountant Office, recommended the formation of an interagency group with goals to provide internet-wide security, direction, and coordination, support ongoing efforts to enhance internet security, to obtain involvement of internet users, software vendors, technical advisory groups, and federal agencies regarding security issues, and to become an integral part of the structure that emerges to manage the National Research Network. There is now a large market for antivirus and anti-malware programs to help prevent cyber attacks.